You need to follow your gut. When you have that feeling of something needs to change, there's a reason for it. No one's going to take care of your asset like you are.
And he called me. He just said, hey, our basement room is flooded, but we acted pretty quick. One of the pros of having a dad that's a contractor is we have guys that are on call and just ready to go. Be in rooms with people that are inspiring you. Your goals are only as clear as how you visualize them. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host,
Anna By Northern Virginia realtor and a mostly out-of-state investor.
And today we have a great update episode. It's just Anna and I. I feel like it's been a long time since you and I chat, at least on camera. I know we chat all the time. But before we actually do the update of what's going on, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our guests that we had the last couple of months. They've been super informative. Loved hearing all their stories. What'd you think of our guests, Anna?
Oh, I loved it. We have people from across the spectrum as far as they've been doing this for 20 plus years and are seasoned in certain strategies, to people that are like us that are just coming online with their investing strategies and sharing their stories. So it's been really cool because I assume people don't want to listen to us talk all the time.
Right. Maybe not all the time, but that's what we're going to do today. So I hope you are tuning in to hear our journey, because it's been a while since we gave an update. A lot has changed since then. So we'll go right in. Anna, I know you've had a few stories that you told me off camera. So what's going on with your projects? You can pick one, you can pick both. And if you have anything that you want to update the audience.
Oh, there's so much stuff. I guess I have to proceed with caution about what I share. And this is one of those situations hinted up front where it's, do you want the good news or the bad news first? And clearly we went with the bad news.
But that's
it's not all bad.
Yeah, but that's what we had this podcast for, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. We want to keep it real. Real estate investing isn't all roses and flowers. So we wanted to give an update of your out-of-state investment property. So I guess we can just start with, let's go with Ohio, because I know we were just talking about it. You don't have to get into specifics, but what's going on and how's it going so far?
Yeah, so we have 6 units in Akron, Ohio. I've had several people recently ask me why Akron, and I tell them it really was just luck. We were looking for a cash flow market that had low entry points for purchases, good rental rates. And I saw a post on Instagram about a house in Akron that was old and beautiful, and they wanted you to save it. And I was like, where the hell is Akron? So that's the backstory of how I ended up in Akron. Because most people are, did you live there? I was like, no, I've been there once, and that was 3 weeks ago. It's the first time I've ever been. So we had if anybody's been listening to this in the past, we had a property manager that we were, should we keep her? Should we not? We knew that this was an ongoing issue for quite a while, but we knew the devil we were dancing with. So we didn't switch property managers probably when we should have. And that's one of those lessons that I guess we've learned as newer investors is you need to follow your gut. When you have that feeling of something needs to change, there's a reason for it. And you can't keep making excuses for other people's shortcomings and hoping that you can fix them, because in most cases you cannot, and it ends up costing you more in the long run. So we switched to a new property management company, which had a lot more processes in place. They've been okay. Some of it was lack of communication. There's still some communication problems there. So Brian and I decided to go out. My birthday was last month in May. And my birthday present to myself, for whatever reason, was let's go to Akron, Ohio, and let's go check out our investment properties and meet the tenants and see what's going on. So that's where we are. So one of our units.
Can I pause you real quick, Anna?
Yeah.
So you mentioned the story of you learned lessons throughout your property managers, right? I love this story because when you bought those properties, you were newer into the investing space, right? So you didn't know what type of questions to ask, what exactly you were looking for. But since we've been 2-3 years into the investing space, you started learning what other investors are doing to vet their property managers, what are some good practices and things like that. So those who are new, there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be some growing pains, right? And this is just a story, and we'll go into the story, but this is just something, if you're newer, we're doing this podcast so we can share our experiences. So you can get 1 or 2 tips of what to do when you're vetting a property manager. But this is why I think that point is so important.
Yeah. And I acknowledge when we first came into this, we were surrounded by community. You and I talk about community all the time about mentors. And a lot of our mentors upfront are buy the properties. They showed us how, and they'll get a property manager. And I think something that as a newer investor, I didn't dive into far enough as I should have was okay, once you secure the property, we learn a lot about securing the property, getting the deal, sealing the deal. But then we don't do a lot of upfront learning about what do you do once you get the deal? What is the next step for getting tenants in? Do you get a property manager? Do you self-manage? We didn't look into any of that. We automatically we're going to get a property manager and keep on going. And that's what we did. But I acknowledge we didn't vet them like we should have because this still is an asset for us. And for us to put that responsibility on another person, no one's going to take care of your asset like you are. No one's going to take care of your property like you are. So that was a lesson learned for us to be more involved. And we are definitely more involved as owners in properties. And so
And
the
can
old
I add,
property.
yeah,
Yeah, go
can I
ahead.
add one more pro tip? So I think we had Grace and Amelia on who wrote
Yep.
the self-managing landlord, right? And they always recommend to self-manage before you actually delegate and get a property manager. So I know it's a little bit harder if you're doing out-of-state investing, but you know, once you learn what is working, what isn't working, what you as a landlord in terms of getting updates, then you can probably delegate because if you're just going brand new and just, you really don't know essentially who to trust. You can go off
Yep.
recommendations from your community, but if they're doing something one way and you prefer, practice another way, then it could cause some friction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I have learned recently because I am actually part of Amelia and Grace's community now. I got a chance to hear them speak at the PPCon last year in Mexico. And I was like, oh, how come nobody talked about managing it themselves and about systems and processes? And it's true. I think had I known what I know now, this is one of those questions we ask our guests. What would you go back and tell a younger self? So if I knew what I knew now 2 years ago, I probably would have gone back and tried to do some of the self-managing myself because we have so many tools and platforms available to us that it makes it realistic to do it even from a distance. If you can find the right vendors on the ground, an agent, a handyman, an electrician, a plumber, having those kinds of people on the ground are very helpful. And then I've also just learned other tips and tricks, depending on the state, of course, maybe putting cameras on the property, especially if it's a multi-unit, so I can see from a distance what's going on. If I need to get the parking lot plowed or need the grass cut, I can do that from anywhere without having to pay someone to drive by the property. So all things I've learned recently that I didn't know 3 years ago when we started this journey.
Exactly. Exactly. So I cut you off and apologies, but you
Mhm.
went there for your birthday. Tell us how
Yeah.
that looked and what ended up
Yeah.
happening.
Okay, so one of the units is vacant and it's a single family and that one was in the process of getting fixed up. We did find a handyman through Thumbtack, which is one of those apps that are now available to us, which are pretty amazing for finding vendors in other places. And he was working on it. We just went to check that house. That one was empty, so that was an easy button visit. There was nobody there. We have another single family. That tenant is in place. They take really good care of the property. They just pay their rent a little late all the time. But that one was a fairly easy button. It was the 4 unit building that has been the bane of our existence, which on paper should be the best of the deal. It's one bedroom, one bath units. They should be all renting for about $800 a month. If everything worked like it should, it'd be like ballpark home run cash flow property. But it has yet to achieve that greatness. We'd had some issues with some of the maintenance on the building wasn't done probably as well as it should have been when it was flipped to what it is now. And we've just had tenants there that have been less than ideal. So we let all the tenants know we were coming for a property visit. We told the property manager to notify them. And we got there. And I will say, I feel like they were probably all on their best behavior because they knew that we were coming on a Friday. We stopped by the properties. We toured each of the units. We did notice some things that we knew were violations to the lease because we had at least read the lease. I recommend even if you have a property manager that's doing stuff for you in whatever state, please read all your documents, read all your leases because they're different from state to state. And okay, some had pets. There's no pets supposed to be allowed. There's smoking going on. There's not supposed to be any smoking on the premises. There were certain access points common areas that are supposed to be free of personal items. And so we were making these notes, but overall the tenants seemed to be fine. No real issues that we spotted. They were all super friendly, let us in, very talkative, very engaging. And then before we left on Sunday, we had noted on Friday that there was a couple things that needed repairing on the exterior of the building that we could do ourselves for relatively inexpensive. So we went back on Sunday and we didn't tell them we were coming because we were going to be on the outside of the building fixing something on one of the doors. And they were not on their best behavior.
To say the least.
To say the least, there is a bunch of people sitting outside in front, most of which were not tenants of the building. And we have one vacant unit that we're trying to rent. And I was like, this is why it's not renting. There's literally a bunch of people sitting outside smoking whatever they're smoking, cigarettes, we'll assume, people coming in and out of the house, kids running up and down the stairs. There's no kids on any of the leases, mind you. There's parts of the building that tenants are not supposed to have access to. There's a basement that has the mechanics. And we found the door unlocked when we went Friday. We locked it when we left. And when we went back, it was open. And there was, personal items in the basement as well, which are not supposed to be there. And we were, okay, we need to do something serious at this point. And we were getting ready to leave. And this is a little crazy. And we wanted to check on the vacant unit before we left. And we were trying to get in through the front of the building and the door was locked. And some guy opens the door. We have no idea who he is. He's not a tenant. He runs up the stairs because the way it's set up, it's you walk in, there's 2 doors. You walk up some stairs, there's 2 more doors. He walks up those stairs and kind of sits himself down and he's talking to himself. I just got out of prison. I got my document. I don't know, some weird stuff. But the guy clearly was not okay. I was very uncomfortable. Brian and I were like, I didn't want to get stuck in the apartment with this guy coming in and locking himself in with us. So it was a very weird vibe. We checked the apartment quickly. We made sure everything was locked. We locked up the unit. We left. We went outside. The guy came down behind us and basically shoved the door closed and locked it. And we're like, who is this guy? Nobody wanted to claim him. None of the tenants. They were like, I don't know. And I was like, should I call the police? And one of our tenants does not want run-ins with the police. He has a record and I understand why he didn't, but I was like, this is not a safe situation. I don't feel safe. He goes, everything's fine. There's no big deal. So we did not call the police because they said everything was fine. It's not an issue. And I was like, okay. Then we drove home and 1:00 in the morning, Monday morning, one of our other tenants sent a message saying that particular individual had barricaded himself in the building, had discharged a firearm. So a bullet went through the front of the building. Knock on wood, thank God it didn't go into any of the units that had people in it. And the police were called and SWAT had to come in with an armored vehicle with a battering thing to basically take down our front door to get to this individual.
Holy
I swear to God, it's an NCIS episode.
Yeah, we talk about all the spectrum of landlord, right? This is on one end of the extreme.
Yes. So luckily, everyone was okay. Everyone was fine. The person was removed and there was no incident. As far as we know, he was not a tenant of the building. So we had to have the doors replaced. And we've basically been working now with the property manager. What we realized is speaking to this new property manager is most out-of-state landlords just collect a check. Not all of them, but many of them don't really, I don't want to say they don't care about the property, but they're just very hands-off. And as long as they're collecting a check every month, they're okay. And in that case, it seemed like a lot of property managers are like, okay, well, I'm going to do the minimum of what I need to do to ensure that the client is happy, the owner is happy, they keep collecting a check, I'm going to keep collecting money. And so they may not do as many things as you would think they should or could do. And that's just because they're not required to. The owners just aren't as invested, I guess, as we are. So do you have any questions? Because the story could go on forever.
Well, we'll try and make it concise, but what ended up happening? He ended up getting arrested and now we're...
Yeah, and that's all I know. He ended up getting arrested and he's gone. He's not a tenant. So what we are working to do now is basically set boundaries in place, which I think is something that was missing with our tenants in our buildings. Like we set a standard for the rental criteria for all our tenants. We just, there's some leases that or most of the leases as they come due, we're probably going to non-renew those leases because there still are several lease violations that we have been unable to fully clear up. We gave the property manager basically a list, like a checklist of all the things we saw, all the things that needed to be taken care of. And some of those things are still ongoing issues. So we're working with the property manager to clean up the building now as best we can. and essentially put in criteria going forward for tenant screenings and for tenant expectations. And we're setting boundaries that were not set before, which is something I now learned as a newer investor and landlord, that you need to set very clear expectations and boundaries with all your tenants. And of course, for the most part, they all need to be the same, because we don't want any fair housing violations.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's very easy to kind of just defer it, right? Especially if you're out of state, you can just say, hey, the property manager has done it
Yep.
for years. They kind of know what they're doing. But just listening to Anna's story, you can have a situation like that you really don't want. So having clear tenant qualifications, having clear expectations for when they are actually living in the units is so crucial. I know we both talk about that all the time, because once they're in there, then in there. I know in the past you had to deal with an eviction, which is easier in some states and harder in other states. I'm in Maryland, which is definitely tenant friendly. So doing that upfront due diligence is so important. So I know that was an extreme. And if you want to ask Anna a little bit more about that, make sure to have her info, because this is definitely a learning lesson for her and me and anybody listening, really, right?
Yes. Yes. I will also say, along with for the tenants, is setting what we've learned is setting very clear expectations for the property manager as well. If you decide to not self-manage, is also having very clear expectations in writing for your property managers of what your expectations are for them as far as communication. If they're going to do visits to the property on a quarterly or biannual basis to do checks on the property. That was the other thing that we didn't do the first time. We just kind of, as you said, we assumed, oh, this property manager's been doing this for years. She knows the market better than we do. We'll trust her to find the right tenants to put in the building. And that was a mistake.
Well, and then you'll also have to tweak it a little, because everybody's states, everybody's income is different. Somebody that's living in Alexandria or in Maryland may have a higher income. So work with your property manager to see, hey, what's realistic, what credit scores are common. But you really want to do that up front, so you can get the high quality tenants that are going to stay for a long time, respect your units, and pay on time, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So qualifications for a C-class neighborhood are very different than qualifications for what we designate as an A-class neighborhood. I think most investors, if you don't know, there's plenty of books about it. I can't remember where I first heard that, but there's classifications for neighborhoods: A, B, C, D, and C is where these particular units are. They're older neighborhoods, not terrible, but not exactly high-end homes. Not newer homes, not fully updated homes. That's kind of where these properties are at.
Gotcha. So I'll try and balance out this. Not that that's a horror story, but it's a learning lesson, right? Or
it is a learning lesson.
Yeah.
You have more positive learning lessons than I do. So let's pivot to you, because you did some really cool stuff recently. I'm going to make you talk about the super cool one that you did recently for your fix and flip.
Yeah. So we already closed on the property, but I like to tell the backstory, because this is actually was on Coach Carson's podcast explaining how I found this deal. So my last deals, I leveraged either wholesalers or attorneys or things like that, other people. But for this particular deal, it was me being proactive, and I was doing what's called driving for dollars. So anybody who's an agent or anybody who's an investor may have heard about this, but anytime you're driving around and you see a property that looks like it's in distress, you write down the address and you try and contact the owner, basically. So this particular property was one that is nearby, about 5 minutes away from where I live, and it looked like a haunted house. It looked scary, and the grass was growing. It looked vacant, and it was perfect. It was a great home, single family home in a nice area here in Montgomery County. So I added it to my list, and this was May 2024. So a little over a year ago, I added it to my list in Deal Machine, which is an app that you can use to contact homeowners. So that same day when I added it, I tried to call, got no answer. It was an out of market. He lived on the eastern shore of Maryland. And one cool thing about this app is it shows you like their actual mailing address. So it shows if they're living in the property or if they're not living in the property. So in this particular case, he was on the eastern shore, about 3 hours away. And anyway, I tried to call a few times throughout the first week back in May 2024. Got no response. But the cool thing about this app is I can set up a mail sequence, like a postcards, and now postcards. My postcard was very simple. It basically said, hey, My name is Nico Garcia. My wife, Jessica, and I are interested in buying properties in this area. We came across your property. Would you be interested in a cash offer? Something like that. And so I set this up in May 2024. So fast forward a little. I set the mail sequence. So every 45 days, postcard. Anybody that does mail sequence and postcards know it's kind of the long game. And you're expecting maybe 6, 7 until you get a response. When I get postcards, it goes straight into the recycling bin, right? And this one, he finally called me in May this year, March. So it was almost 9 months from when I started sending postcards. And I looked it up. It was the 6th or 7th postcard. I can't remember off the top of my head. And he called me. He just said, hey, I got a postcard. I'm interested in selling. I'm going to be there a little bit later today. Would you want to meet me? He told me he was also meeting another investor. Sounded like he really needed to sell. Luckily, that day, Jessica was off work, so we went together. I think this also kind of helped. My postcard said Nico and Jessica actually showed up. It's not like a wholesaler or anything. Anyway, got in there, met him. It needed a lot of work. Exactly what I thought. From the outside, the inside looked even worse. For me, I'm over here thinking opportunity. I look over at Jessica's face. She's like, oh my God, what are we getting ourselves into? Which is great because I want her to be involved as much as possible. This property had a lot of stuff. I think we ended up having to, in order to clear it out, 5 dumpsters. So it was a lot of stuff that was there. It's been vacant for a few years from what he's telling me. It had graffiti on the walls, a hole in the roof. It needed a ton of work. It still needs a ton of work. But long story short, I was just trying to build rapport and kind of asked him what he was looking for in an offer, quick close and things like that. I personally had an idea. I've done some construction. I had an idea of what rehab costs would go, what resale costs, the ARV, what it would be worth after we repair it. And in my head, I was like, all right, this probably is around $150K worth of rehab. The ARV was around 600. So I'm just reverse engineering what I would be comfortable with an offer. But I didn't send an offer that day. I ended up touring it the very next day with my dad, who is a contractor, and just wanted to confirm my rehab cost, and then gave me the green light. He was thinking around the same thing. The gentleman wanted around $375,000 for the property. And after a little bit of negotiations, we were able to get it closer to what I wanted, which is $348,000. The numbers made sense for us.
So you mentioned Deal Machine, and I'm going to do a plug for one of our previous podcasts because we have had someone from Deal Machine come on and actually walk through what Deal Machine is. It is an app that we use for finding properties. It's good for agents, not just investors. So whatever episode that is, we'll put it in the show notes to go back. And then I also wanted to circle back and just highlight the fact what you said, like postcards are along, and you may end up sending a year's worth of postcards, which ends up being half a dozen to a dozen if you're doing it every 1 to 2 months. But it's really about the consistency because most of us get the postcard, go straight to the trash. But while you're walking to the trash can, you're going to at least look at the postcard and glance at it. It may register, it may not. But every time you do that, eventually there's going to come a day where you're like, oh, another one of these postcards. Now is the right time. It's all about timing. That's why you have to be consistent with it because the first postcard may have arrived when they weren't ready, but the 10th or 12th postcard may arrive just as they're finally at that point. And you want to be the consistent person that's sending the postcard because you don't want to get to 8 postcards and then give up because you're like, this isn't working. And then some other investor comes in and sends number 9 and basically gets to reap all the rewards of your postcards coming, planting the seeds in this person's head, but then you gave up before you got to the diamond mine. Like, I just wanted to highlight those 2 things.
And that's spot on. And I give a lot of credit to Deal Machine because if it was up to me actually sending a postcard physically every 45 days, it wouldn't happen. So they have this system where you could set up a mail sequence and it automatically goes out. So I'm not even really thinking about it. I also love that list of driving for dollars because nobody else has that list. It's your unique list. I have about 350 just because I'm always on the road. I might end up getting my next deal off of something like that. Did you have another question?
No. I was just going to say that's how we found our properties was Deal Machine and postcards. And it doesn't have to be super creative and flashy. It can be a basic postcard and you can send the same one every 45 days. You don't have to change it every time. But that's what we did. We literally sent the exact same postcard every 2 to 3 months consistently. And it was easy because you press a button, you set it and forget it.
One more thing about the postcards is I actually take a picture of the property because a lot of times they don't know the condition of the home, especially if they're not living nearby. I took one when the grass was really long and it looked kind of spooky. That's what's going to be on the postcard. It's going to say, hey, do you own this property? So it's not like Joe Schmo. It's somebody that's actually local saying, hey, I'm in the neighborhood. Let me,
I saw your house.
I physically saw your house. And then I ended up meeting him one more time. So a third time. And he kind of dropped this bombshell on me. He was basically like, yeah, I'm in foreclosure. If I don't sell this property by the following Tuesday, it was a Friday, then, it goes to auction and I lose it. So me, on the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, this is a great opportunity, but also understanding the urgency, right? So anybody who's bought homes before, they know it takes a little bit of time with the title company just to make sure that it's free and clear, a clean title. So me, I was like, oh, shoot, it's a Friday. Usually title attorneys don't work over the weekend. I have a great relationship with one nearby local. So I sent him a text. I gave him a call. I explained the situation and he was like, we can expedite it just to, maybe save this guy from losing his house. So he needed to pay back taxes, property taxes. He was behind by this Tuesday, but I wanted to do it properly, right? So I didn't want to just pay it and then, the gentleman just walk away. I built good rapport, but I wanted to protect, me and my partner's money. So what I did is Monday and Tuesday is when I was really talking to the title attorney to say, hey, how can we do this so that, we stop the auction, but also we protect, it was a big investment to stop this auction. And he did a little bit of research. He realized the property that he owned on the Eastern Shore was free and clear. So essentially we put like a lien on that other property in order to protect our money. It was an extra line of security, basically just to show, hey, yes, we're acting on good faith, but it's an investment. And then fast forward a little bit. So we were under contract for almost 2 months. And there was a few reasons. He was in foreclosure. He was in bankruptcy. So technically he couldn't sell the home without getting approval from a few different parties. I was in communications with the attorney, also with the seller, just to kind of give them updates of what's going on. And then the end of April is when we finally closed on the property. Super exciting. And that's when now we're in the process of, we had like almost a month of demo and clean out. And now we're currently in the permitting and architectural drawings process. So we're super excited about this project, and it's a bigger project, and then one final point. So I've been using a private money lender for quite some time. He's helped us with our last fix and flips, our last Burr projects. That could be a whole nother episode of how you get private money lenders. The funniest part is that this home is about two lenders' house. So he goes on walks all the time. So once I showed him the address, he goes, oh my God, that house we call it the haunted house. This is one that we were always curious about. So not only is he helping us as investors, but also we're helping him boost up his community, getting a property that was borderline dilapidated to a nice resale or re-rental. We're still trying to figure that out, property. So it was a good win-win. It was a win-win for the gentleman as well. He actually is going to end up walking away with some money rather than a foreclosure on his property and losing a good asset. We're happy because we got it at a great price, and the private money lender is happy because he's got a property that's going to be worth a lot more, help his own home in the community.
Yeah, there's so many nuggets there to pick up. I don't even know where to start. So obviously we talk about partnerships and about finding key players all the time for your teams, having a good title attorney. I mean, clearly maybe you should ask your title attorney if they want to be on the podcast. Just saying.
Good point. I might have.
So they were able to find a solution for you. I mean, you literally had a timeline on it. It was, because I remember this phone call, we were talking about it. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You kind of don't count those as days because it's the weekend. And then you basically had to photo finish, put everything in place, have a title attorney that knew what to do, had creative ways to put it together, and be able to put something in place to stop the foreclosure by Tuesday. So literally 2 business days later, you had to have a plan in place that not only stopped the foreclosure, but protected you and your private money lender. So title attorney, clearly somebody on your team that you want to have a good one.
Heck yeah.
A private money lender, you have a private money lender that you've worked with before. So having that private money lender also made it easier for you to pull cash right away. You didn't have to go through a loan process. You didn't put your own cash in. So you're putting in the time and effort. Someone else is putting in the cash, which is great for those that don't have a lot of cash. And the fact that it's a local private money lender, that just happens to be unusual. But the fact that he lives nearby, so not only is he going to get a return on his investment, but his property values are likely going to go up because now you have taken a property in his neighborhood that you're going to rehab and increase the value on. So this is the problem solving aspect that I don't think investors talk enough about. They get the call from the investor, and sometimes they're not the best of intentions, or they're inexperienced when an investor calls. But really, we are trying to solve problems. We are trying to find win-win solutions for everyone. So you were able to help your private money lender in multiple ways. You were able to help a gentleman who was in bankruptcy and foreclosure, who was likely going to lose his property to the bank. You were able to find a solution that worked for him and still protect yourself. Those are all things you need to take in. His stories are so much more inspiring. Well, mine are what not to do. His stories are what you should do.
No, but it's so true. You want to, speaking of the private money lender, that comes with time. If you're a newer investor, you're going to probably have to go through a few deals before you actually build some credibility and things like that. If you want to reach out to Anna and I to talk about a credibility package that you can help, not only with private money lenders, I think you also used it for just like a regular bank loan, which we'll talk about in a second, your other deal. But yes, ended up being a great story. We're still in the process. So make sure you guys follow me on social media. If you don't, give updates of what's going on with that project. But yes, we're so excited. And the main takeaway for me is if you're an agent or an investor, you can be proactive to get deals yourself. You don't have to rely on other people. The driving for dollars is a very easy way. As an agent, you're probably doing showings all the time. So maybe keep your eyes peeled. You're looking for the ugly home in the nice neighborhood. At least that's what I'm looking for. Write it down. Even if you don't have an application, just write it down and skip trace them and see if they're looking to sell. I'm still doing that to this day. I have a big list. I'm hoping to possibly find the next deal. But speaking of Deal Machine and postcards, I know that's exactly about this project that you have in Southern Virginia. I wanted to talk about that one because that one is pretty cool. I know it's a bigger project that he's taken on in the past. So any updates on that one?
I guess we've talked about those before. Those are the ones that it's 2 duplexes now that we were able to secure off market using Deal Machine and postcards. So we were able to reach out to off market owners and negotiate deals with them. And so it worked out. One of them is finally done. They were both gutted to the studs. They were complete and total rehabs. One was already zoned as a duplex. That one ran over. I guess this is the downside to not having family members as contractors. I fully admit I wish, and being out of state, or I say out of state because Southern Virginia is a different area altogether. It's a 4-hour drive for us. So that's why I say mostly out of state investor, because it feels like another state. So we have it up. We have it listed. Finally, one of the duplexes is done. And now it's just been a matter of getting it rented, of learning the market down there, of tweaking the ad. We haven't had a ton of success yet in getting it listed, but I'm going to update the listing here in a second because part of one of the communities I mentioned, I'm part of Grace and Amelia's community, the Wire community. So I've had some really good support there from some of the ladies in that community that do rentals. So I've gotten some ideas about maybe doing a June special where I give a discount on the security deposit or the first month's rent. I still have to type it out and figure it out, taking professional photos, just the market analysis. So I'm confident we're going to get them rented. It's just taken a little bit longer than I had hoped or expected. And then the other duplex that we have was the one that I had talked about previously. That was a single family home. We got a special use permit. We got it turned into a duplex. That one has been long since delayed. That one we bought and it's been in the works for a year. That's how long it's taken to get it done. Again, this is the hardships of being out of state and being so far away from the projects that we can't be there every day to kind of ride someone's coattails and be, let's get it done. How can we do this? Being at a distance, it has made it a little harder to kind of be that strong hand. Let's keep moving. Let's go. Let's get this done. But we're finally there. I think they said they have to do a couple of electrical touches. They have all the meters in. They've sent us pictures. So it should be done this week. So I should be able to get photographs of that new duplex, hopefully next week, and get it listed. And fingers crossed that we get someone in there between July and August and we can get all 4 of the units rented. So right now, I fully acknowledge we pumped the brakes on buying more properties, and we've been focusing on stabilizing Ohio, and we focused on getting Southern Virginia properties up and running. and rented. I think we were some of those kids that took off running at a sprint. We got a bunch of properties, which is great. We got good prices on them. And now we're all right, let's take a pause. We probably bought more houses in 2 years than most people do. So we can take a pause now. And instead of getting more deals, we're trying to stabilize the ones that we have.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I know you got this deal through Deal Machine off market,
Yep.
which is fantastic. But do you mind talking about how you finance these deals, you and Brian? I know you
Yep.
worked with a local bank, right?
Yes. So for the one that's done now, we call it the Pine House because it's on Pine Street. That duplex, we actually ended up working with a small local bank. I've mentioned this before about building relationships and find a local bank that you can work with. We got an introduction because these houses are in a small town where everybody literally knows everyone else. So we got introduced to the bank, the senior loan officers at the bank through a contact of ours, actually the owner of the property, the first house from Pine Street. And we told them what we were trying to do. And we did send them the credibility package that you're talking about, that we got that from our PM community. That's where I learned about it. And then the template came from a member in that community that he shared with us. Joe, thank you. And so we sent them the credibility package. We tweaked it. We took out some stuff that they didn't need to see. We tweak our credibility package. That's a pro tip. You can build a package and then pull parts out of it depending on who you're sending it to and who your audience is. Because we've used it not just for the bank, but we also used it when we were meeting with city council to get permitting for the other property. I'll talk about that in a second. But we sent them the credibility package, and this is a small town bank. They're like, wow, we've never seen anything like this before. This is amazing. You guys clearly are professionals and know what you're doing. And we're like, yeah, exactly. So we were able to work with the bank, and they are a bank that have their own portfolio, which means that they essentially give out loans and they keep the loans in-house. They don't serve it. They don't give a loan and then send it out to sell it off to another company. So they have some flexibility in tweaking the terms. And so we worked with them to get essentially a loan to buy the property, a construction loan to fund the rehab of the property. And then once it finished rehab, then it rolled into a fixed rate loan. It's a 20-year loan. I think it's a 5/1 arm. So after 5 years, it adjusts by one percentage point up or down away. But the point is that we were able to get all of this done through the one bank. We got really good rates on it compared to what other commercial loans are, because it is considered a commercial loan. And then during the construction phase, because they were doing draws on the loan, the bank would send someone to go look at the property and make sure that stuff was getting done before they paid out the loan. So it kind of gave us an extra layer of, well, somebody's checking the house at least to make sure stuff is getting done, because they're not going to get paid if the bank doesn't approve of things that are done thus far. So that's how we funded that property. Whew.
So one of the benefits of doing something like what Anna's mentioned is using one bank for the purchase, the rehab, and then the refinance. Essentially, Anna and Brian did a BRRRR, but they used one company. And one of the benefits of doing that is essentially it's one loan that kind of has phases, right? So you're not having to refinance and things like that, because that can cut into profits, right, Anna?
Correct. That is accurate. All we had to do was pay for, I think there might have been a second appraisal. They did an appraisal at the beginning of the loan to estimate what the ARV would be based on the rehab. And then at the end, they did another appraisal just to ensure that it actually appraised for what they had estimated it had. And of course it did. So that was the cost of refinancing it into a fixed rate mortgage product, was just paying for the appraisal.
Gotcha. Okay. So what's next for this one? I know you have it up on the market. It sounds like you're self-managing it, right? And you're looking for the quality tenant. I know we talked about this, just you and I, and you're being a little bit picky, which is good. You rather have it sit than have somebody and you learned your lesson yourself.
Yes.
So what's next for you and Brian on this project?
So this particular project, I said it's up on the market. We are working self-management. I've selected a property management software. I chose Doorloop. There's other ones, Folio and Buildium and things that property managers use. But that's a one-stop shop for me to be able to go in and put the listings up, put the pictures up. If I need tenant communications, it's my property manager on a computer, essentially. And we found some really good boots on the ground vendors that we've started relying on for things like cutting the grass, cleaning the property. We found a local photographer to take pictures for us. And the other thing that we are putting in place that we've learned from other people that are a little more experienced than us is in these buildings, we're going to pay for the Wi-Fi as an added bonus for the property. And it's going to be like a security package. We're going to have cameras, and I recognize it's different from state to state. So you got to make sure you know your privacy rules and regulations in each state. But on the exterior of the property, so that we can keep eyes on, we have a shared backyard. So I want to be able to see the backyard and know when the lawn care person needs to go out, or if we need someone to come shovel the little driveway or whatever. It gives us added security, especially now when it's empty. And two, it helps me keep eyes on the property so that I can send someone out when it needs to happen versus paying someone to just drive by because I can't physically see the property. So that's it. We're going to keep it. We're going to rent it out. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And did you already do the refinance? So it's in a fixed loan or? Okay.
It did. It automatically rolled. We didn't have to do anything for that. When we originally signed the loan product, it was all laid out in the loan specifications that there was going to be the purchase. The rehab was going to be for 6 months. At the end of the 6 months of the rehab period, then that was going to automatically roll into a fixed rate loan product. And we already knew the terms and the interest rate. Everything was laid out from the beginning. So we knew exactly what we were rolling and when we were rolling from phase to phase.
Got it. Okay. Cool update. Make sure to keep you guys updated once she has tenants in there and it's cash flowing, and, we'll make sure to add pictures and things like that. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yes. I cross my fingers a lot. So what else so enough about me. What else do you have going on? I know that you have your, I don't know which way you want to go, because you have other rentals that are kind of set it and forget it. But the other one that's kind of actively that you talked about last time might be your MTR.
Yeah. So yeah, I do have 2 other single family homes that are, as much as I hate saying passive, it's set it and forget it there. I'm obviously making sure I'm keeping up with the quarterly check-ins, but yeah, so my update is my midterm rental. So if those have been following, Jessica and I bought this home in November with plans on renting out the basement to midterm rental. So not so much like a short-term rental where they're staying for a weekend Airbnb. Oh, and not a long-term rental. And one of the main reasons why we chose this route is because we liked 2 things: the flexibility of having somebody in there. If we didn't like them, we're not tied into a year lease. And we didn't want a short-term rental because it's a lot of turnover, especially with Jessica and I just living here. It's our first home together. So we wanted to make sure we're finding the sweet spot. So the midterm rental, there was some upfront costs furnishing it, but the benefit is you can charge a little bit more than the long-term rental. So I think the last update, we were still working on it, but since then we have gotten a tenant. We found a great midterm rental tenant. Yeah, she's awesome. She moved in actually when we left to Greece. It was interesting timing, and I'll chat about Greece in a second, but she moved in. I set all the expectations through like a Zoom meet. I was able to tour the property with her, kind of show her where the trash cans are, things like that. And I left a house manual, so she kind of knows what to expect, the Wi-Fi code, everything with it. And shout out to our community, because I definitely leveraged somebody else's thing, copy and pasted and changed it to my own. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But one thing that I really liked is there's a website called Furnish Finder. Some of you have probably heard of it. Some of you haven't, but it's geared towards traveling professionals, traveling nurses. I think it started as traveling nurses, but now it's digital nomads, especially after the pandemic. A lot of people can work remotely. So we put it on that site, and it did take a little bit to actually get a good qualified tenant. We had somebody and it fell through, but long story short, we found a traveling nurse that is also in school. She was commuting 3 hours to work before, so she was really looking to get local. And yeah, so far so good, actually. So I've shared great stories, right, of what's going on with me, but actually, I'm not even sure if I told you, Friday the 13th, this past Friday, we had a flood. We had our first flood in our property. It was like a quick flash flood here in Maryland, and it just monsooned for like an hour. And unfortunately, she was at work. I was at another event or something. So at 11 o'clock comes Friday night, I get a text that says, hey, our basement room is flooded. It was about a quarter of an inch. So nothing huge, but it did come in through a window well that we just installed. So that was on us. We installed it, realized that we needed to do a little bit more excavating and reseal the window well. And we also added a the sump pump for the actual window well to make sure the water is channeling out. So this is kind of an ongoing thing that we had to move our tenant out for the night. So she ended up staying with a friend, but we acted pretty quick. I said, as soon as she told me, we went down, Jessica and I went down there. It was midnight, Friday the 13th. I was like, this is what happened today, and cleaned it up as much as we could that night. And we just said, hey, you can stay here, but we prefer if you let us work for the next 24 hours to get it, ready. Long story short, yeah, it's, we did all the work the next day. One of the pros of having a dad that's a contractor is we have guys that are on call and just ready to go. So we had somebody there on Saturday, some basically trying to channel the water away. We installed the sump pump, and now she's back in there. And that was the update for our house hack. One of those things, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess that's the kinds of stories. I think some of these stories are the ones that people are like, this is why I will never be a landlord. But I just want to emphasize, I can speak for me and I think I can speak for you on this. Neither one of us are discouraged either. It's not like, oh my God, I'm giving up. This doesn't work. I'm never going to do it, because I know it's cliche. Nothing in life is worth it. If it's easy, it's probably not worth it. There is a risk and a reward factor here. And we are taking a lot of risk, fully acknowledge it. We're going through the worst of it. And I know in my case, if I can get through all of this stuff, everything else that comes down the pipeline when it comes to investing is going to be like icing on the cake. Just saying. It's going to be easy.
It's all lessons, right? So everything that you're doing, you're going to learn a little bit from it, and learn from Emma and me, because it's one of those things that we're continuously going to be going. But we're happy. The tenant is happy, and she is helping us offset our housing expense. So if you ever read the Cash Flow Breakfast Club, that is all we're trying to do, is we can do that and then buy our next cash flow rental property. So in the future, one of my updates is going to be an out-of-state investing project. I'll speak it into existence, because that's eventually what we're looking for, is cash flow rentals to help offset our active income so we can become financially free. And that's one of our goals. That's the goals, right?
That's the goal. Yeah. So did you have to do anything? So I'll ask this, because I know in some cases, someone doesn't have the fortune of having somebody readily available to come immediately fix it. Did you have to talk to and you may not have, did you have a plan, or did you have to talk to your tenant about, I'll say, making things right with her? She got to stay with a friend, but like, what would you have done? Would you have compensated her monetarily? Did you have a plan for that?
Yeah. So great question. And yes, when that night when we were there working, I felt so bad. I was like, this is worst case scenario. So I offered to say, hey, if you stay at a hotel, we will pay for a night or two while we do this. And we got lucky. She's a great tenant. She was like, no, it's okay. Like, I totally get it. Not really your fault. And she was like, I have a friend nearby that I can just spend the night with and just keep me updated the next day. But yes, we fully understand that this was an inconvenience, and we were open to doing that. Now, we might still give her a discount on this upcoming moves, just to have good faith on something that Jessica and I need to talk about. I am lucky that I have a team that's just ready to go. I understand that. The faster you react to something like that, I'm so glad that didn't happen while I was in Greece, when it happened when we were actually here. Yeah, just trying to make an end, get your tenants. You want to make sure you're taking care of them, not only in your house, all over, make sure they're safe and they feel seen. So
yeah. And having a plan B, which is where I was asking the question. I feel in investing, you can't have a one-track mind with one plan, one option, one way forward. You always need to have a plan B, maybe a plan C in the back of your pocket for any of these situations.
Exactly. And one last thing that I know, just touched on it. Jessica and I had the privilege. I know you were planning and it just didn't work out, but we went to Greece, Mykonos, Greece, for a mastermind. And I really didn't know what to expect, right? Going to these masterminds, it was actually my first mastermind. Funny, because Jessica is not very in real estate per se. She is with
She's
house
getting
hacking.
there.
She's getting there. It really wasn't real estate related. It was more like talking about your purpose, which I really relate to, right? We're all in this. I don't want to speak for you, Anna, but we're all in this to kind of do something bigger with our time and our purpose. So we were there. Half of it was working towards that, and then the other half was just exploring the beautiful island of Mykonos, which anybody who knows me, Greece is like top spot. I love Greece. I highly recommend, and I plan on going back probably every other year. Got to meet some awesome people that are up to great things. We'll actually have some people coming on as guests in our future episodes. Make sure you stay tuned. It was a life changer. Highly recommend it. And I know Anna and Brian will be there in the future, the next ones. But get yourself with people that are up to big things. I always say, hey, you want to be in a room where people's, everyday lives are your dreams, right? Your dreams are their everyday lives. So one big thing that Jessica and I are working towards is the financial independence, right? Where we can have work optional. And that was probably half of the people there, and they're just trying to work on bigger projects. I highly encourage you guys to check out masterminds, get in groups, get with people that are doing what you want to be doing, because that's the quickest way to kind of expedite your journey.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because we've gone to one of these masterminds before. We've gone in October, but we have parental duties, kids. But it's fine. It was worth it. It was for the kids. But I will say, even if you're a newer investor, don't be afraid about putting yourself in a room with these people. Because I know I suffered big time in the beginning with imposter syndrome, thinking I don't even have a property, or we haven't even started, or we don't know what we're doing. But I mean, that's the fastest way to get from 0 to 1 to 100, is to push through the imposter syndrome. You can feel it, it happens, but just recognize that most of these people are willing to put themselves in a room with others that they can bring up. Most good investors that have been successful with it want to pay it forward. At least all the ones that I have met, they have some go giver in their heart that I did it. There's enough pie for everyone. Don't feel like you need to wait to be successful before you put yourself in a room with these people. So I want to ask, because I didn't get to go, we can end it here. What are 3 key takeaways that you took away from your mastermind in Greece that you reaffirmed something for you? What are your top 3 takeaways from the mastermind? And we can leave it there.
Hey, yeah, put me on the spot, right? All right. So, I mean, the first one is exactly what you just said. Be in rooms with people that are inspiring you. So it's funny because Jessica and I bought this home. And we were not ready to book a trip to Greece, but this is going to be super informational. I knew who was leading it, Mr. Amnai Casey, and he's a good friend of mine, good mentor. And the people that he's going to invite on this trip are all going to be similar mindset. So we'll do it. We'll figure it out, and we'll figure it out later. That's number one, is definitely be in rooms. The second one is we did an exercise. It was building towards visualization. Your goals are only as clear as how you visualize them. So we made a list of 25 kind of goals or things we'd like to accomplish in our lifetime. We narrowed it down to our top 12, and then we narrowed it down to our top 3, basically reverse engineered of 3 years, 5 years, or whenever it is happening. How does that look? Even to the detail. What color shirt are you wearing, to actually make it a photo or video, a 10-second clip of what it looked like. So quick personal one. I don't have any kids yet, but one of them I want to be a great father. So the visualization was me just being at my kid's soccer game. She's scoring the winning goal. It was very vivid of what it looked like, what I was doing, what she was doing. It was a powerful exercise. It was the last exercise of the whole mastermind. It kind of worked and built toward that, right? So that was the second one. It's a powerful exercise. If you ever want to talk about it and how that works, definitely reach out to me, because I'm still working through it. I only got to the top 3, so I still need to get to the top 12. And then the third one is, it's been a while since we've done some book recommendations, but The Wealthy Gardener, which is right here, it was a homework that we had to do before we went on the trip, and it's very powerful. It's basically talking about lessons from a gardener. It's like a parable of this wealthy gardener. I want to there's so many nuggets from that one, but we use that to kind of build on our future goals of how we can become wealthy. And wealthy means so many different things for different people, whether that's actually monetarily or if it's with time wealth. There was so much takeaways, but those are the top 3 that I could think of off the top of my head.
I love that. I just got the book from the library because I knew that was the homework assignment you guys had. And I was okay, I need to read this book because I love me a good parable book, because that's exactly what Cash Flow Breakfast Club is, or what's the Richest Man in Babylon kind of vibe. So
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's what it sounds, that kind of vibe.
exactly. It's like a story. So definitely Anna reads it. We'll give you guys some, I guess that's our homework, right? For whoever's listening, check it out, and we'll have an episode of what our key takeaways are. We'll kind of go from there. But
Yeah. And I guess it's time to wrap it up. We've had lots of updates on where things have gone. I think we're going to do another one soon just about market in general, because the market's been a little wonky, at least here in the DMV where we are. And if anyone out there is an investor or has their own stories to share, we would love for you guys to reach out to us and maybe have you as a guest on the podcast, because we love sharing stories from all different kinds of investors so people can see themselves in one of us.
Yeah, for sure. If you are at all interested or just want to chat about a certain topic, please reach out to us. We love our guests. We have some valuable guests that have come on in the past and that are coming on in the future. So definitely stay tuned. And like Anna said, we're going to do an update of the market update of what's going on here in the DMV and what we're seeing. But stay tuned. And that's going to do it for another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. If you found any value, please like, share, subscribe, DM Anna and I. You can reach out to me at N Garcia official, Nico Garcia on Facebook and everything else. And you can reach out to Anna at
I'm Anna by Realtor on Instagram, where it's just where I am most of the time, or Anna by everywhere else.
all right, guys, until next one.
Bye.